How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 3 of What If Deku Could Create His Own Quirk. And now, before we begin, I would just like to tell you all that I'm going to be responding to pretty much every single comment down the comment section below, so if you have any suggestions or what ifs you would like me to do, please comment them down the comment section below. And now, let's begin. Izuku would get checked by Recovery Girl before thanking her after she would let him go, deeming that he was not injured at all. Izuku would leave the premises, walking back to his house, just wondering what the next day of UA was going to have in store for him. As Izuku would make it back to his house, he would go up to his room to finish up some homework before going to bed. As we cut forward a couple of weeks, as we now see Class 1A and Class 1B meeting in the auditorium of UA. Good morning, Class 1A and B. Today we are going to be going on a field trip together. That's why we asked all of you to meet here right now. So, Aizawa would say, we are going to be going to a place called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. It's basically going to be just a... how do I say this? A field trip to get you to know how to use your quirks in different scenarios. So we're going to be training in a lake, or a fire, or a city, wind blowing, a tornado, thunderstorm, all that different kinds of stuff. So we would now like you to go to the locker rooms, get changed into your hero costumes, supplied of course by the support course, and then get onto one of the designated buses for your certain class. Once you do that, we'll go to the USJ and we'll start the training. All of the students would rush off, going to their designated locker rooms, getting changed in their hero costumes before going towards wherever the bus bay was, getting onto either the Class 1A or Class 1B bus. Izuku would get onto the bus, as we now see him rushing out of the bus along with the rest of the class to marvel at how massive the USJ was. They would all look at the USJ, just looking at it with stars in their eyes. They couldn't believe just how big this place really was. So they'd all be looking at it as they'd finally walk up the steps, greeting with the supervisor of the building, 13. 13 would greet all of them before showing them inside the USJ. This class, this is the USJ, she would say, broadening her arms, showing them, revealing the USJ in all of its glory. All of the students would give out just an just sound, look how magnificent the USJ was. They'd all walk in just completely in awe, looking around at all the different zones there was. This place was huge, many kids would mutter under their breath. We now end up seeing Zuko and the rest of his class staring on as all of a sudden a purplish portal would swirl right by the fountain of the USJ. It would start swirling rapidly before quickly expanding, opening up wider. As I saw when 13's eyes would be fixated on this. One kid would even say, they even have fake villains here, causing Aizawa and 13 to focus even more, as they would end up seeing villains seep their hands through the portal before walking fully out of the portal, as we now see massive amounts of villains standing there in front of the entire class. As Izuku would be staring at it along with Class 1A, as all of a sudden Aizawa would jump down, yelling for 13 to protect all of the classes, as King would end up doing the same, jumping down, going to fight all of the villains as well. 13 would be looking around as all of a sudden the purple villain-looking thing that had most likely supplied the villains with the portal would end up appearing out of nowhere right next to Class 1A and B. Good morning, classes. There seems to be quite a lot of you. So, just as an added security measure to make sure our plan doesn't fail, we're gonna have to split you up a little bit. So, here goes nothing. Kurogiri would before opening up a portal but under all of under all of just Izuku Class 1A and Class 1B, splitting them up throughout the zones, as we see Izuku falling down, landing right on his back on the just flood zone, right onto the boat. Izuku would look around before Tsuyu Asui, Mineta, and Itsuki Kendo would end up landing with him. Izuku would greet both of them, or all of them, as they would end up looking on to see Aizawa and the Night King just taking care of all of the villains at the center, easily taking care of all the army, which would end up leaving just the villains left, or the main leader villains. These would be Shigaraki, the Nomu, and Kurogiri, of course. Izuku would look around, seeing many villains that were, of course, aquatic types, would be staring on with a murderous, hungry look written all over their face. They would be looking on towards Izuku and the other kids on the boat. However, Izuku would jump in the air, clenching his fist before punching right down into the water, causing the water to start to spiral. His water would be sent flying upwards, as all of the people would be sent flying backwards because of the massive tidal wave that Izuku had caused. This would allow for an easy entry for Izuku and the rest of people there to easily escape the boat. Once they would easily escape, Izuku would be staring on from behind a rock, watching as his teacher and Aizawa would both get mercilessly just beaten by a massive bird monster with scars littered all over his body. Izuku would be watching this very closely, as all of a sudden the bird monster would take care of easily defeating both Aizawa and his teacher. As the Nomu would end up looking around, looking for its next target, sniffing the air, wondering where everyone else was. Finally, the Nomu caught a scent, Izuku's. It would rush right on towards Izuku, smashing the rock, causing Izuku to jump back, grabbing the three of the UA students that were there with him. Pulling them back, he would set them down before running off, as the Nomu would be hot on his tail, following him ever close behind. Izuku would continue running, or he would end up turning around, using his telekinesis to stop the Nomu right in its tracks. As the Nomu would screech, just unhappy with its abilities not moving, would screech or quickly just starting to move its arms before it ended up being too strong for Izuku to do anything with it much more than just stopping it for a couple of seconds, causing it to break free of Izuku's telekinesis, rushing towards Izuku again. However, Izuku would end up jumping backwards, as he would end up breathing fire right onto Nomu, as the Nomu would screech out in pain, as fire would seep out of the Nomu's just head, as the Nomu would end up jumping back, holding its head, just putting its fingers deep into its brain, just squishing it, just how much pain it was in. However, this wouldn't affect it at all, as it would easily heal from it, having a basic regeneration quirk. Izuku, seeing this, would wonder what he was supposed to do, as the Nomu would rush towards him once again, slamming a hand right into his stomach, sending him flying upwards into the ceiling, smashing through the glass roof. Izuku would fall sorry about that. Izuku would fall down from the sky, with panes of glass falling down with him, as shatters or pieces of glass would fall down as well, hitting Izuku on the face. He would wipe them off before harshly landing on his back once again, as he would choke up quite a bit. He would end up barely getting up, his back just squelching in pain, as it just kept pulsating. That's how bad it was. he would end up holding his back hunched over. However, the Nomu wouldn't even care, continuing its relentless attack, rushing towards Izuku. It would slam its fist right into Izuku's head, as Izuku would try to just stop it from hurting anymore. However, all of his efforts would be just in vain. He would feel this as if he'd just gotten hit by a truck, but he would stay where he was. He would end up using the telekinesis to divert some of the force back behind him instead of all into his head. Izuku doing this would end up just holding his fist before punching the Nomu right across the face, breaking some of its teeth. As the Nomu would only look towards Izuku like it had done nothing, would end up slamming both its fists right into the side of Izuku's face. As Izuku would end up just feeling all of that, he would fall down to his knees, holding the side of his head with both of his hands, holding it, shaking his head in pain and agony. As he would he would end up being punched right in the gut once again by the Nomu. Izuku would stare on towards it, wondering how was he going to be able to beat it. He would get up just one last time, remembering he couldn't die here. He still had that promise he made with his mother. He had the promise he was going to get her out of that bad neighborhood, and he couldn't just let her down now. He just couldn't. It wasn't going to be a part of his plan. So Izuku would instantly hop up, rushing towards the Nomu, using his strength quirk, just using his telekinesis as well, to make his fists fly faster than lightning, hitting the Nomu at such rapid speed and strength that dents would start to form in the Nomu's skin. It would start screeching in pain, but Izuku was going so fast, it couldn't do anything at all. He kept punching the bird monster in front of him over and over and over again. So the Nomu would end up barely being able to jump backwards, giving off a screech before it rushed towards Izuku once again, wrapping its fingers all around each other, going to punch Izuku's stomach. However, Izuku would dodge beneath his fist, uppercutting the Nomu right in the jaw, breaking most of its teeth, before Izuku would end up looking up with smoke emitting out of his mouth. Would end up breathing a massive breath of fire going right out of it, as this fire would end up catching fire on the Nomu's brain, burning its healing part of it, as the part of the healing quirk that was stored in his brain would be completely decimated, as the Nomu would give off even more screeches, looking around now, seeing Izuku's figure. However, someone would be right there next to him, Izuku. Izuku would looking on, seeing just a blonde-haired person right next to him. You may just be in Class 1B. That doesn't mean you don't deserve to be in Class 1A. You've beaten both me and Todoroki. So how about this? I've seen how strong you are. Why don't you see how strong I am? Plus, you've probably gone through enough pain already. I'll take over things from here, Bakugo would say, as he would jump in, finishing off the already weakened Nomu, as Izuku would fall back, staring up at the sky, just breathing heavily, as having used his quirk to such an extent, and just using multiple of his quirks at the same time, it had just such an effect on Izuku's body. As Izuku would start to feel the toll it had on him, he'd be staring up at the sky, breathing heavily over and over again, before smiling, knowing that he had basically managed to defeat a stronger foe than he had ever faced before. Bakugo, taking charge, would slam an explosion right into the side of the Nomu's head, burning out one of the Nomu's eyes. The screeching Nomu end up jumping in, using its one eye, but it was at such an angle it couldn't see where Bakugo was coming from. So Bakugo would jump onto the Nomu's head, grabbing its brain, pulling the brain out of the Nomu's socket, as the Nomu would fall down to its knees as the brain would drop to the floor. Bakugo would smile knowing he had won, as all of a sudden a blue-haired person would have its hand flailing out, reaching on towards Bakugo. And that is where part 3 of What If Deku Could Create His Own Quirk comes to an end. I hope you all did enjoy it, and if you did, please consider subscribing, as it really does help this channel out, and you can even be notified when the other parts of this series do end up coming out. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.